Breaking news, President-elect Donald Trump saying he will meet with intel officials as a result of President Obama's sanctions against Russia that were issued today. As you may have seen, Obama issued an executive action ejecting 35 Russian intel operatives from the U.S. They were supposedly diplomats. Yeah, right. The president said in a statement, quote, "These actions follow repeated private and public warnings that we have issued to the Russian government and are a necessary and appropriate response to efforts to harm U.S. interests in violation of established international norms of behavior. These actions are not the sum total of our response to Russia's aggressive activities, so expect more to come." A spokesman for Russian President Vladimir Putin saying Moscow will consider retaliatory measures in response to the sanctions, so expect some U.S. diplomats to be kicked out of Russia. Joining me now, Fox News political analyst Tammy Bruce, foreign policy analyst Arash Ari Aramesh, and John Hart, former senior aide to Senator Tom Coburn. John Hart, first to you. We have this response from Donald Trump. He said, essentially, we have to move on, but I will meet with intel officials. To me, that's suggesting that he may change these policies once he comes into office. What do you think?
Well, he should certainly review them. And I think this was the right response by the wrong administration. I think ideally President Obama should have handed this off to the incoming Trump team and let Trump handle it in consultation with Congress. But frankly, I think President-elect Trump is a little bit relieved by this action. It means he doesn't have to deal with this on day one. His response, of course, will be analyzed, and people will judge whether he lessens or tightens these measures. But look, I think Democrats have misplayed this. I think in many ways President Obama emboldened Putin to take these actions, and the response from people like John Podesta have played into Putin's hands by giving him the legitimacy and attention he craves. When Podesta suggested we didn't have a free and fair election, I think that's absurd to suggest that. You know, Russia did not tilt the election.
And of course, President Obama hasn't gone quite that far. But Tammy, where does Donald Trump take all this? He doesn't telegraph all that much from the statement that he just put out.
Well, look, he's obviously assembled a very serious group of people when it comes to the nation's leadership, his cabinet, a lot of ex-generals. These are individuals who know the dangers that many of these countries pose, including Russia. I have to tell you, of course, Donald Trump's going to have to deal with this on day one. What Obama now is doing, it seems like he's trying to play catch-up. People are seeing what a man can do who's not even quite president yet when it comes to making a difference.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah, and the argument, too, that this is what the Russians have done has affected the very fabric of our democracy. Well, then you better do something. What we do know is that this started way back perhaps in 2012. The question becomes, why, when it comes to the spies that we've ejected and their spy headquarters, why has Obama allowed them to operate when we know that they've been in the State Department, the White House, the Office of Personnel Management, Obamacare, and now he's doing it a few days before the new year? Right. He wants this to be dumped into Donald Trump's lap. Donald Trump will make either it harsher or he'll make adjustments that will make it make more sense.
Well, Arash, I had John Bolton on a previous show today, and he was actually saying that he was surprised it was as light as it was. He thought that the United States was going to come down hard. As Tammy said, if in fact this really affected one of our elections, which is a huge hacking policy on the part of Russia, if that happened, President Obama should have come down even harder on the Russians. What do you think?
You know, and with all due respect, Ambassador Bolton, he is in for a big wake-up call and a big surprise when President-elect Trump takes the oath of office in January and becomes president, because he's going to be much nicer to the Russians. President Obama did the right thing today. He went after the Russians. He expelled 35 Russian diplomats, you know, intelligent agents for that matter, right, and also shut down.
By the way, Arash, let me just stop you for a second. If we knew that they were, one second, if we knew that they were agents before, and if we knew that these facilities that have been shut down were essentially listening posts of the Russian government, why didn't we shut them down before?
Because there's a thing called diplomatic immunity, and people who are familiar with intelligence operations, they know that people who go abroad, they actually operate under diplomatic immunity. I agree that they should have been kicked out. I think we should be much harsher on Russia, and it's really sad and rich at the same time. And it's really rich and sad at the same time to see that Republicans are willing to support anyone, including Putin, as long as they are opposing President Obama.
But it's interesting that you support John Bolton, a Republican, on this issue. John Hart, do you think that the president should have come down harder on Russia, as both John Bolton and Arash think?
Well, I think what he should have done is come down harder on Russia many years ago for its actions in Ukraine, its actions in Syria. So I think in some ways, President Obama is trying to play catch-up with this action today. And, you know, going forward, I think President-elect Trump has to take a clear and tough stand whenever Russia tries to interfere with our election or any other activities that they're going to do in Ukraine in the future.
Tammy?
Yeah, look, I think that with everything that's being laid out, one thing everyone can agree on, even the liberals are afraid if everybody who's going into the cabinet are hawks. These are not individuals who are going to play patty cake with the Russians, which is what's been happening for the last 8 years. This is not just a catch-up, but it's this effort to, I think, for Mr. Obama, President Obama, to go out saying, I did do something. This is important. And I think what you're going to see with Donald Trump, just like with everything else liberals have complained about, the opposite will occur.
Okay.
And people will be pleasantly surprised.
We have Captain Chuck Nash with us. Captain Nash was here to talk about terrorism, which you will do a little later in the program and our preparedness for it. But Captain Nash, if in fact Russia was hacking us to interfere with our election, directly interfere with our election, that's cyber warfare. Doesn't that call for a response a little tougher than what we saw today?
Well, I think the United States and a lot of people are trying to figure out what exactly is an act of war. We know what it is when kinetic things are involved. We know what it is when you put mines off of somebody's coast or mine their harbors. But when it comes to the whole cyber thing, we're still trying to figure that out. When you start interfering with elections, I mean, the United States certainly has never done that in South or Central America. But what I'm saying is if the Russians start doing it here and they're doing it in Europe, one would have to just think that maybe this is being done quite a bit. So if we're going to start slinging kinetic stuff just because somebody is playing around in cyberspace, we've got to really think about this, because the next thing is power grids start going down, water starts getting shut off, and now all of a sudden you're talking kinetic.
That's true. We're all connected in one way or another to the internet and the computer world. Coming up, thank you, gang. Coming up, the